Welcome and good day. We are here at our November 2023 SAL Structured Conversation. We are so glad you have all joined us here today. My name is Julie Morrison. I'm Assessment Director at Glendale Community College in Arizona, and I am lucky enough to be a member of the SAL Professional Learning and Development Committee. On behalf of the committee, I want to thank you for participating in today's structured conversation. SAL and our committee are committed to involving, featuring, and representing diverse perspectives and identities in our offerings to meet your professional development needs. You can help us achieve this goal by submitting a structured conversation proposal of your own, and we will give you the link to that at the end of today. And more information can be found on the SAL Structured Conversations page. So if you want to be like Tony, consider a little bit whether you want to do your own presentation. Now, during this presentation, we invite you to participate by asking questions, sharing comments, and providing feedback through the chat function, which we will be monitoring. To get us started, please put your name and role in the chat so our presenter can get a sense of who is in our audience today. Also, just in case you are not as familiar with Zoom, although I think many of us are at this point, you can enable captions in your Zoom toolbar along the bottom if you would like to have captions available during this presentation. Now I'm going to kick us right off with welcoming our presenter, Tony Paracchini, who is going to be sharing his thoughts on aligning learner skills with labor market needs to enhance career outcomes. Tony, take it away.
Thanks so much, Julie, and good afternoon, perhaps good morning to some of you. I'm excited to be here today to talk about the topic of aligning learner skills with labor market needs to enhance career outcomes. And I know that title is a bit of a mouthful, but I hope it hit home for some of you and piqued your interest in joining today's session. I thought I might start with perhaps a bit of an icebreaker here, but I wanted to go on record as saying, as part of my preparation for today's session, I watched last month's structured conversation assessment as a leadership process. And I have to say, as someone who does not hail from the student affairs assessment arena, I found Dr. Heather Strine-Patterson's presentation very enlightening. It was one of those moments where you start watching a presentation to get a sense of the flow and structure and preparation for your own, and you quickly find yourself sucked in. And I wound up watching the full conversation and came away informed about the traditional assessment cycle and the proposal of a multi-level assessment process and how it can provide clarity around all the different roles on campus that play a part in the assessment process. And I just found it super informative. So thank you for that. And I think it is safe to say that while our conversation today, I hope, will be compelling in its own way, that I've come to grips that I'm at least in part helping to lower the bar for future presenters that may be somewhat intimidated to follow a presentation like Dr. Strine-Patterson's. So I'm Tony Paracchini. I'm a senior product manager here at Anthology. My entire professional career has been in the education space, going on some 23 years now. To start, I held the illustrious position of Director of First Impressions or Front Desk Receptionist at a trade school, while I myself was in college pursuing a degree in biology. And my time working on a campus steered my professional trajectory away from the life sciences. And I was really drawn towards wanting to be a part of and contribute to the higher ed community. So I found myself taking the first full-time job opening at the school I was working at, became a financial aid planner. I'm dating myself now, but I used to administer FAFSA workshops back when the paper FAFSA was still the primary form of completing the federal aid application. And the Department of Education's Federal Student Aid Division was working on a bold new FAFSA on the web initiative, and which has long since become the de facto method for FAFSA completion. So from there, I moved through the ranks of the FA department before joining Anthology, which was then campus management back in 2015, as a product manager focused on the regulatory module within our student information system that supports the administration of Title IV aid at higher institutions. And then back in 2017, we decided to launch a solution that was focused on aligning the curriculum and learning outcomes of an institution's programs and courses to real-time market demand for skills and competencies. that were in need by employers, right? Our aim was and continues to be to help institutions help their learners to make informed decisions about their pathway at an institution and how that pathway aligns with learner career goals, and be able to better contextualize how what they're learning is going to be applicable in the market. And then with the formation of Anthology back in 2021 to form an EdTech ecosystem of solutions, I expanded my role to lead our career development efforts with both the workforce analytics solution I just described, as well as our digital badging and learner achievement platform. So I share all this background just to give you context to know what type of lens I'm coming into this conversation today. Hopefully you all noticed that nowhere in my background did I mention experience in student affairs assessment. And actually my meeting with this group today is my first professional experience to date. So I'm actually really looking forward to sharing some information. It's hopefully helpful and impactful, and look forward to learning from you all as well, right, with respect to some of your efforts around learner career readiness. So with respect to topics we'll cover, I always lean towards starting off a story about learner career readiness by looking at some of the recent studies focused on the topic. So in that regard, we'll focus on some of the market concerns that have been persistent over the last several years. I'll share insights from the perspective of learners and employers, and we'll delve into the trend towards skills-based hiring as well. Next, we'll move on to the topic of career preparation and skill development. And here I'll share some thoughts on our recent student sentiment gathered around career preparation. We'll talk learner skill development and ways in which we can consider taking a holistic student lifecycle approach to career readiness. And then last but not least, I wanted to spend some time talking about the disruptive force that is AI and some of the key implications that we see it having in the education sector, and share some of our thoughts and vision around how AI could help advance learner career readiness. All right, so let's delve into some of those market concerns around career readiness. So anyone keeping up to date on market research around career readiness and skills in higher ed will no doubt be familiar with many of the market concerns that I'm highlighting today. Still important, though, I think, to speak to some of the most prevalent, as I hope doing so will give you a good sense throughout today's conversation of ways that we're working to address many of these concerns, which could in turn inform some of your strategies. With respect to learner concerns around skills, I wanted to share results from a survey we conducted here at Anthology last year. That was entitled the Student Success and Career Preparation Survey. It was a nationally representative survey of current students of the US higher education system. And one of the themes that we saw was that most students agreed, right, that their degree would help prepare them for their future career and would be valued by a future employer. And along with that came the concern around finding a job in their field, right? So 7 in 10 students being at least moderately concerned with that, and themes amongst those who were either extremely or very concerned. They were worried about their level of preparation, whether or not they were taught the right things while they were in school to prepare them, the lack of experience when applying for positions, and impact that the pandemic has had on job prospects. Earlier this year, Inside Higher Ed partnered with Wiley University Services, and they developed an infographic with information from that study called Closing the Skills Gap, where they surveyed 600 HR professionals from multiple industries in order to present employer perspectives on the trend of a widening skills gap. So results clearly showed an increase of employers with skills gaps, increasing from 55% based on data that was collected back in the 2021 report, up to 69% based on data collected in the 2023 report. Looking at the donut visual, we can see that the distribution of feedback around reasons why skills gaps are forming, with 20% reporting that they simply can't hire qualified candidates, 32% reporting that they can't hire or retain qualified candidates, and 40% reporting that they can't retain qualified employees. And main barriers that kind of came out of that study were really around 40% of respondents saying that their organization lacked the development initiatives or the resources needed in order to address this issue. So we hear a lot of focus, right, around skills in today's job market. And I think with good reason, as we've just seen how employers have struggled to hire and retain the talent that they seek. A general trend within the labor market that we've seen emerging over the last few years is employers shifting away from listing specific degree requirements in job postings to focusing more on an applicant's skills and competencies. Relatively speaking, I'd say we're in the early days, right? But the shift to a more skills-based hiring method is gaining momentum as employers try to improve on their ability to fill positions with applicants that have the skills and competencies that they're looking for. A Harvard Business Review published in 2022 went about analyzing more than 51 million jobs posted between 2017 and 2020 and observed that employers are resetting degree requirements in a wide variety of ways, right? They pointed to a structural reset that occurred between 2017 and 2019 based on demand for talent just far outreaching the supply, where employers reduced degree requirements for 46% of some middle skill positions, or as they defined, those requiring some post-secondary education or training, but less than a four-year degree, and 31% of high skill positions being impacted. So jobs that were most affected were in the IT and the managerial occupations. And then they pointed to a cyclical reset driven by the need to find skilled workers during the pandemic. So overall, they observed this pandemic-related degree requirement reset in roughly 548,000 job postings involving 20% of middle and high skilled occupations. So, and in addition to this Harvard Business Review reference here, I also wanted to, or I thought it was interesting to share that we're seeing this skill-based hiring momentum picking up in government as well, where the governors from 10 states now, as of this June, have taken initial steps to remove degree requirements for a significant number of state classified positions. So those 10 states, if anyone's curious, are Virginia, Colorado, Maryland, Utah, Pennsylvania, Alaska, North Carolina, New Jersey, South Dakota, and Ohio. So for us in education, this shift arguably emphasizes a need to help learners capture their skills and enable them to make their skills actionable in the eyes of potential employers. And I don't think this is an argument for the dissolution of the traditional degree, but more of a recognition that the high level degree alone is not in itself being effective in helping employers hire the talent that they need. All right, so next let's dive into learner skill development as a topic and explore the concept of a holistic student lifecycle approach to career readiness. So in the webinar description, I made mention that the need to help learners represent their achievement is growing. And to help elaborate on that, I wanted to share some of the feedback that we're getting from students around career preparation. So I referenced that student success and career preparation survey a bit ago, which captured some broader sentiment. But late last year, we conducted another representative survey nationally here in the US of undergrad students to help us validate and understand some more specifics around sentiment in this space. And as part of the survey, we found that the majority of students reported that obtaining a job after graduation was a key factor in their decision to enroll in college. So as certainly are other factors for sure, right? But this reinforced that age-old adage, right? That students are pursuing higher education in order to better their career chances. They also indicated that they are choosing majors based on how they align with their career goals. And in a related point, they indicated that they were attracted to colleges who offered career advising to them at the prospect phase compared to those who do not. And I think this point is quite interesting as it highlights that prospect students' desire to have career-focused program selection and pathway conversations in very early stages of their interactions with an institution. Students indicated they want help mapping a path to their institution to gain the skills that they need for their career. And finally, that they're interested in using an application that can help align their academic journey with their career goals. And I don't think any surprises here with respect to learners' desire to have ready tech, right? That can be an aid. So this feedback has helped inform our focus on delivering solutions in the career development space that can help a student define and move through this journey with their career goals in mind. Helping learners speak the language of skills in a way that is consumable and understandable in the market can be a complex decoding endeavor. And I think it really starts with us and institutions' ability to do the same. And it's not aided by the fact that there's any number of different skill listings and taxonomies that can represent tens of thousands of individual skills, each of which can have nuanced meaning across different industries in the market, right? So one of the tasks that we've been focused on is creating methods to help institutions extract the skills that are embedded in curriculum and co-curricular activities to identify market-aligned skills that they already have associated to their courses and learning outcomes. And then on the flip side, we also work towards helping to complete a skills gap analysis to identify when in-demand skills are missing from these offerings by infusing job market data and trends and employer feedback, right? We know the market is ever evolving and changing. New jobs and skills emerge while others decline. And I would argue that we can and should infuse market skill alignment into program reviews, right? Being mindful of the skills gap between current outcomes and relevant changes to employer skill demand in the market. This can help create a repeatable process that considers the evolving changes within the market so that your programs can evolve as needed as well. And the ability of an institution to conduct these types of curricular and co-curricular offering reviews with an eye towards skills outcomes can help lay the foundation for helping to ensure students are developing relevant skills and knowledge to meet current industry needs. Micro-credentialing is an area in which the labor market is becoming increasingly responsive to, with a growing number of employers seeing micro-credentials as a means to assess an applicant's skills and competencies with more accuracy than a traditional degree. There are many definitions of micro-credentials floating out there, all pretty much saying the same thing, but maybe with some slight nuance. I like to think of micro-credentialing as more of a framework and a mindset around the intent to give learners smaller or more incremental and often stackable recognition of achievement that's verified by the institution. It's giving learners something tangible, right, to recognize achievement along the path towards obtaining a higher level degree. The most popular representations or outputs of this process are typically digital open badges and certificates and certifications. And our students are placing increased value on micro-credentials from what we're seeing. There was a joint survey published just last month by the Online Professional Education Association and Straightline, where 76% of more than 1,100 respondents who had some college experience but no credential, the disengaged learners as they referred to them, said that micro-credentials that indicate knowledge and skills and can stack towards larger credentials would increase their interest in continuing to pursue an undergraduate degree. So helping learners to be able to articulate their skills through verifiable digital means like open badges or certificates and certifications is something we spend time helping our customer institutions with, and are exploring new ways technology can help with the design and the creation of these digital representations of achievement and create stackable pathways that align to the jobs that you're aiming to prepare your students for. Anytime I'm talking about student success and career readiness, I like to point to this outcome survey, which highlights the relationship between the number of connections students had with their institution that were related to career preparation and the likelihood that as an outcome, they felt like they achieved their goals, they thought their education was worth the cost, and that they were earning an income over 40K. And I really like this study as it drives home not only the effectiveness of our efforts to help prepare learners for their career, but I think it challenges us to think of ways that we can continue to increase these points of interaction. And one of the themes that I hope you take away from today's conversation is that from a learner career readiness standpoint, we should be looking at ways that this alignment between academic journey and career goals can stretch across the student's life cycle in order to best set them up for success. So that brings me to the interactive portion of today's conversation. Since I don't often get a chance to work with student affairs assessment professionals directly, I wanted to take this opportunity to get some real-time feedback from this group and perhaps share community insights with the group at large that will be meaningful to you all. So if we use the student life cycle points that I've listed out here as our framework for this poll, I'm curious to understand more about where your institution is currently focusing your career readiness efforts. Just for poll's sake, I want to call out and get you wondering that I think career services would fall under student services in the life cycle points that I have listed here. So I'm going to launch a two-part poll now. 1 second. All right. Part 1 is asking, during which points of the student life cycle is your institution currently focusing your career readiness efforts? The poll should be multi-select, so please select all the different points where you currently have efforts. And then part 2, because I'm curious, based on student assessment feedback that you're getting, at what points of the student life cycle should your institution be focusing career readiness efforts? We'll give this a few minutes to, well, maybe not a few minutes, that may be a little long, a few seconds to percolate and results to come in. All right, so I'm already seeing a pretty good trend towards, I think, a bulk of current services exist, career readiness services exist within student services. Then next in line, equal parts, probably academic progress and support and co-curricular engagement. And then least so in the areas of admissions, enrollment, and grad and alumni engagement. And part 2, actually, let me go ahead and end this and share so everyone can see. All right. So yeah, like I was saying, in the first part, it looks like student services got the overwhelming majority at 82%, then about equal shares, 50-55% of academic progress and co-curricular engagement, and then 14% for admissions enrollment and 18% in grad and alumni engagement. And then where you felt you should be focusing efforts, the majority is still within student services, but almost equal, right, in academic progress and support. And I think I would totally agree with that, right, for some of the points that we had mentioned before around helping the student understand how their academic progress is preparing them from a career readiness standpoint. Definitely increased focus in admissions and enrollment based on your feedback as well. About level on co-curricular engagement, that's interesting. And it looks like the increased focus in grad and alumni engagement would be helpful as well. So this was really interesting and informative for me. Thank you for sharing that here. I guess I would ask too, if anyone wants to come off mic at this point, happy to kind of hear your thoughts about the poll as well, and the effort of making this kind of a conversation, interactive conversation. If not, that's all right too.
And you can certainly also share those thoughts in the chat as well. But yes, if there's anyone who would like to unmute and give some initial feedback, we would welcome it. I think everybody's thinking too
Sure.
hard right now.
Yeah. Well,
So
as everybody's percolating on that, I'll keep going, and maybe we'll come back to at the end too. So, all right. So hopefully the conversation so far today has highlighted some of the benefits of thinking about career readiness from a life cycle perspective. So I think whether it's in servicing that prospective students' career alignment objectives through admissions and enrollment, or recognizing and showing career-related value in a learner's incremental achievements towards knowledge and skill building along the academic journey, providing good services to help learners to be informed of market demands and prepare them for entering the market, connecting them with activities outside the classroom that can provide needed skill building opportunities, or working with your grad and alumni populations to ensure they're able to make best use of the achievements that they've gained, skills and competencies that they have, and providing them opportunities to upskill over time as they progress through their professional journey, right? Where I've witnessed the most success and impact to student sentiment and satisfaction in the space is when institutions have made that concerted effort, right, to address career readiness at all of the key life cycle points for students. So in this last section of my presentation, I wanted to speak to some of the ways that AI's catapult into the limelight this past year has impacted the labor market. Some of the ways that we're thinking about how AI can help in that building of a foundation of institutional offerings aligned to market demand, helping to extract learner skill exposure, and looking at pathways that align with career goals. I found a recent Titan Partner study published, interesting, that showed that faculty members have been slower than students to adopt AI tools in the last year. Nearly half of college students are using AI tools this fall, but fewer than a quarter of faculty members use them. And results suggest that not only are college and university students using generative AI at high levels, but that they're perceived as so useful that even if an institution or faculty policies were put in place to prohibit their use, 75% of AI user respondents asserted that they would still likely make use of AI-enabled tools. So it's interesting, I think, to look at this through the lens of technosocial trends and perhaps recognize that it's somewhat futile to attempt to suppress this wave. And in the same study, 75% of the faculty respondents who do consider themselves to be regular AI users said that they believe students will need to know how to use generative AI in a professional setting in order to succeed. And this, I think, points to a responsibility to look at how we can help learners gain some of these essential skills and competencies that are emerging in the market. Our labor market data partner, Lightcast, recently released data via a blog post which highlights the increase in employer demand for job applicants with generative AI skills. In 2023, job posting demand for generative AI skills increased more than 1,800% year over year. And according to Lightcast data, in 2022, there were only 519 job postings in total calling for generative AI skills. And that number just so far in 2023 has been more than 10,000. And we'll recall that the debut of ChatGPT was in December of 2022. So I think we're definitely seeing the impact of it and other similar technologies hitting the market. With respect to all forms of artificial intelligence skills, there have been more than 385,000 postings alone this year of employers looking for these skill sets. So when we look at the roles most affected via the visualization on the right, we see most are within the tech industry and in jobs focused on building new applications, jobs like data scientists, machine learning engineers, software engineers, AI engineers, and product managers. But towards the top of the list, there's one notable exception. Job postings for curriculum writers takes the #3 spot. Only data scientists and machine learning engineers had more postings. So economists at Lightcast view this as a possible first sign of a second wave of AI, where the technology is starting to reshape jobs outside just the tech industry. With Layla O'Kane being quoted specifically as saying, the future of work is going to be defined by how humans work alongside AI, and this will be a key occupation to watch. So pretty amazing, I think, to see the job of curriculum writer standing out amongst a crowd of tech industry jobs. I think it really makes salient the demand for ways AI can be an assistant to the institution, and in more ways, I would argue, than just curriculum writing. We're thinking about ways AI can play an integral part in supporting career readiness. So we've been spending a lot of time observing market trends and thinking about the ways AI can responsibly and securely act as an assistant to institutions and learners, and while ensuring we as humans remain in control. So as it relates to learner career readiness, I think two main themes are emerging, right? First, I think we need to consider ways AI can be an assistant or a co-pilot, if you will, to institutions in a manner that helps build that foundation of opportunities for learners to journey through, that help align that journey with their career goals. I think large language models and machine learning have certainly highlighted very real potential to help sift through vast amounts of data and play a role in analyzing those skills, right, that are embedded in all that reference information that you have related to your curriculum and co-curriculum offerings, and helping to also, identify those gaps, right, where your current offerings could be filled with other relevant skills in demand by employers in the market today, right? But again, infusing that market trend information into the equation. And I think it also can help with the design and the creation of the digital representations of achievements and stackable pathways. So often when we're working with institutions, one of the hardest things to do in implementing these types of processes is just the administrative burden of creating the thing itself, right? Whether or not it's a digital badge, or it's a certification, or it's a course, or it's a program structure, or it's a stacked pathway, right? So allowing a tool like AI to come in and help us make sense of all that, make recommendations, and then ultimately present those to you and have you being the verifier of the outcome that's shared with your learners, are some of the things that we're thinking about here. Second, I think we need to consider ways in which AI can help learners to distill all the data that their institutions have about them, their personal goals, their achievements, and how we can adequately prepare our future graduates with the skills and competencies that they need in a current competitive marketplace, right? So we're looking closely at ways that AI tools can help assess pre-existing learner skills and competencies, reviewing transcripts for extraction of learned skills and highlighting opportunities for transfer credits as one example. AI could help learners understand their strengths as well as areas of improvement needed, right, in order to be best prepared from a skill perspective. And could also play a role in surfacing various educational pathways for them to choose from, right? So based on a subset of skills as a starting point, right, there are multiple potential pathways that students could go down from an educational and a career perspective, and AI can help aggregate that and present those options, right, to choose from. So if we think back to the earlier referenced outcome survey that showed a direct correlation between student success and the number of connection points that institutions have with them that align the learner's journey with their career goals, and think about the impact that an AI-powered chatbot could have, a personalized career coach that's available 24/7, right, to provide career guidance based on individual student interests, skills, and goals, recommend career paths, suggest relevant courses, and perhaps provide insight on job market trends could certainly be impactful. So as I near the end of my presentation today, I wanted to share just a bit of our vision around how we see some of the concepts we've discussed today surfacing within applications to help learner progress through education, through their journey, right, with a focus on achieving career goals. I mentioned before, right, at Anthology, we represent a large ecotech of edtech solutions. So we're looking at how the achievement data that's captured within that ecosystem can be used to the learner's benefit from a career readiness standpoint. The Achievement Studio platform that you see here serves as a learner-centric hub for aggregated achievement, career goal setting, and progress tracking. We've joined our workforce analytics solution, Occupation Insight, in Achievement Studio to give learners a personalized experience as it relates to tying their achievements to real-time market demand for skills. Historically, this platform has had access to open badges that are awarded via our milestone solution, which can carry with them skills that students gained by virtue of completing the criteria needed to earn the badge, right? Skills that the institution has verified as an outcome. So as part of our Skills Intelligent Experience initiative, we're taking Achievement Studio from a place of mostly skill reflection to a place of skill alignment and action from a career readiness standpoint. So depicted here in the current version of our UI, you can see a learner gaining a deeper understanding of their skills and how they are contextualized in the labor market. The example here is centered around a learner who aims to become a software developer, and how the skills they have gained thus far align to this career goal. The example skill of software engineering seen with the expanded detail here helps the learner understand its demand in the market based on what percentage of employer postings for a software developer are looking for this skill. No surprise here, the demand's high, right, at 98%. Moving down into the skill details, the learner can review a narrative description of the skill in order to understand how it's expressed in the market. And they can see other jobs, right, that employers are seeking that skill for to help them understand the full potential of the skills that they're gaining. And lastly, within the skill details, we see the learner's evidence of that skill. And currently that's focused on those earned badges, any uploaded work samples, and endorsements that are received from within the platform. And finally, on the right, under top career matches, we're helping the learner sift through the vast labor market data of jobs and skill demand. And we're surfacing jobs that align well to their skill set based on those skill sets that employers are seeking for these positions. So this is an intelligent way to aid the learner's exploration and understanding of how their skill set can be applied in the market. And as we continue our evolution, we'll be tapping into the broader ecosystem here at Anthology. So this mock-up is kind of the next step where if you look at the skill evidence space towards the bottom of the expanded skill details, it's now grown beyond just badges, work items, and endorsements, and now includes organizational membership, co-curricular event attendance, courses themselves, and the skills outcomes of those courses. So within our ecosystem, we're looking at information about academic performance, students' progression through programs of study, individual courses, the skill outcomes of those courses, taking into consideration, of course, the learner's performance in these courses. We're looking at online course performance, as well as some of the detailed course information that we have, like course syllabus, defined learning outcomes, and then even performance on individual tests within those courses. And of course, like I mentioned, we're looking at co-curricular engagement through our Engage platform, and looking at how we can capture learners' exposure to skills as represented by their engagement in organizations and roles that they've held on campus. And finally, I wanted to share our vision for a learner journey record that's not only amasses skill, knowledge, and sentiment information collected for a student over time, but also infuses some of the core elements of leveraging AI as a career readiness assistant. With access to learner achievement data over time, generative AI could help a learner distill this data into meaningful readiness metrics, right? That can take into account their academic program progress, their exposure time in their career field of interest, skill alignment, right? Also serve as a skill gap analysis tool to help them understand what skills they still need to develop, and what pathways exist for them to gain those. So we're continuing to explore ways that AI and technology, right, at large can help improve the cohesion between learners and institutions and employers. And we hope that these initiatives will help support learners in their career endeavors. So with that, I'll move to wrap up today's conversation. And I just want to thank everyone who joined, who participated in the conversation and the poll earlier. Would also like to thank Sal for having me as a host today. And also would put out there, if anyone would like to engage with me specifically on this topic, please feel free to reach out. Engaging with the community to understand your challenges, your problems is truly one of the best parts of what I do as a product manager. So I definitely welcome the engagement. So from here, I think I would either hand it back to Julie or John, and we'll look at Q&A maybe. Right?
Yes. So I think everybody has been processing, and so there's not too much in Q&A yet, but as I have many questions, I'm sure everybody else does, because this was just fantastic. And while I am maybe asking this first question, I'm hoping those of you who will take an extra moment and be able to add some information into the Q&A. Otherwise, I can just keep asking questions all day long. All right, so here is sort of my first question that also pulls on something that Christopher shared in chat in response to your survey. So they said that some parent surveys some parents really are being more vocal during the admissions process about career options. I think we know that students are coming to us with career options. My sense is that our student affairs professionals are much more on the front lines of understanding the needs for the skills and to help students through this, more directly through their academic experience and their co-curricular experience to get to their career. But to your point, when you were talking about faculty and faculty's, unwillingness at this point, maybe to really engage in AI and some other things, and I think faculty and maybe some administrators and maybe some people within student affairs, they see our institutions as, these bastions of higher ed, and they're about degrees, and they're not just about, producing a student who's going to immediately go into a career. You can hear a lot of those other sort of maybe underlying concerns of what is higher ed. And so I think there's a lot of balance there. So I'm finally getting to my question, which is maybe tricky, we'll see. So what I'm wondering is, how can student affairs professionals help their institutions understand this necessary shift from degrees, not that we're leaving degrees, but kind of from degrees to the skills that students are needing because of what we're seeing in the marketplace? And how can they communicate that to colleagues, to administrators, to faculty, so they can understand what implications there are of this potential need to serve students, maybe in a little different way than we have thought about previously?
So from my perspective, yeah, that you did start with I think a question that comes up often, and or at least a dialogue, right, around that perception sometimes within institution and faculty and academia about or maybe an inherent resistance, right, to wanting to infuse market demand as like a key element of curriculum development. And I would love to hear others on the call's perspective, but I would share mine and just my interactions with institutions is the information often gets to leadership to a point where I've heard the phrase used back to me of, it's time to have some tough talk, right? Because we're either going to make a decision to continue down a path that is not aligned with what our learners and our students and the general market is heading, right? And we'll have to deal with what the repercussions of that path will ultimately be, right? Or we're going to recognize that we'll be responsive to these elements without losing some of those core things that have historically made your program offerings what's the word that I'm looking for? Like the integrity of the program, right? It's not sacrificing the integrity of the program in order to do this. It's actually standing it up and in a way adding another rung to help make that program more prestigious in the market, so to speak, right? So yeah, that's some of what I've heard. Hopefully that's helpful. But yeah, I would love to hear others' thoughts as well based on your experiences on campus.
And while you're potentially putting that information into the chat, or if you would like to mute and share, you can. Jen asked a follow-up question, which is, do you have suggestions or ideas on how to communicate or market? And specifically, she's talking here about Milestone or Achievement Studio, but I think any type of concept or program like that, how do we market it to students so that they understand the value of this? So we had been talking earlier about kind of marketing this maybe to colleagues at our institutions, but what about to our students?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it's, I mean, as it relates to the platform referenced, I'll just be specific since it was called out. Like Milestone is our digital badging platform, and then Achievement Studio is kind of the learner-facing UI for those digital credentials and some of the other aspects that you just saw me show a few slides ago. So, I think again, if I fall back to kind of the main theme or crux or takeaway from my time with you all today in trying to focus on the holistic life cycle approach to career readiness for students, it starts at the earliest possible phase as far as presenting digital representations of achievement as early as possible. I say that again, being that that's what Milestone primarily can do, right? So, infusing those at points of successful enrollment into the institution, activities that occurred during orientation, getting students acclimated to life on campus, right? Initially, right? There are those initial, I think, connection points are where at least I've seen others have success in starting to formulate that that expectation, right, in the learner's mind that there will be some communication through this avenue, right, and this is the value that it gives to them, and this is the reason why it's important to them.
All right, so here's kind of the next follow-up to this. One of the best representations I've ever seen of the way in which we talk about student learning outcomes is sort of a stealth bomber that this presenter had flying across their screen during a presentation that employees, staff, faculty tend to be really good about being able to articulate learning outcomes, potentially articulating what skills they want students to be developing. We are often not very good about discussing that overtly with students. We kind of think, oh, they're just, I don't know if they're going to discover these learning outcomes by osmosis. For students or for institutions that are just starting their journey, maybe do not have access to the types of technology tools that you demonstrated that would make this very clear. How can we start to encourage our institutions, our staff, our faculty, our administrators to really share the learning outcomes and the skills directly with students in these spaces? So you identified a whole bunch of different spaces where this can be happening. How have you seen, or how do you think that the people in those spaces can actually, be really direct with students about this in ways that would be helpful for them?
Yeah, it's interesting when you ask that question. My mind goes back to an earlier reference to parent sentiment, right, around learner career readiness. And I've seen a lot of success in the earliest phases of engagement with new students, right, coming in to an institution where the parents are, often more so than the learner themselves, right? Wanting to know, right? What's the return on investment, right? What is my a child going to learn, right? And how is that going to help them in the future, right? So even without like specific tools, right? But just leveraging alignments between your programs of study and occupations in the market, right? There's numerous. There's a primary, right? At least here in the States, government-backed crosswalk between those two entities, which can be helpful in kind of creating that point of alignment, so you can start to communicate, which jobs, right, that you're actually aiming to help students prepare for with certain programs of study, right? Other pointed like examples of the success, or the next one that comes top to my mind is um, making reviewing of the knowledge and skills that students are learning while they're in class, right? An actual assignment or a requirement, right, of the course. Has had a lot of impact, right? So it's, to that point of having reflection between, okay, this is what I'm learning in class. These are the skills and competencies that I should have if I successfully complete this course, right? Like how how are those skills, right, applicable in the market, or what are some of the opportunities in the market where we see employers seeking those skills? So just having that connection point with the student along the learning journey is where I've seen a lot of success.
All right.
Sips if you're not familiar with what I'm referring to. Thanks, Kristen.
Yeah, no, that was great. So here's my last question. I admit I stalked you on LinkedIn in preparation for this session, and I noticed that your academic credential is in biology, and it doesn't appear that you have done anything in biology since that time. Thinking through everything that you're doing in your career now, kind of where you start your academic journey, how do you, like, as you reflect on that, maybe what did your institution do right, or or how could your journey have been better supported from, if we were taking this more kind of career and skill stance earlier on?
That's a great question. And yeah, it was really, I guess it's the obvious disconnect between my academic journey and anything that was going on in my personal and professional life at the time. Personal, maybe that's too strong a way of saying it, right? But like, there really was no acknowledgement from my institution at the time of what my personal goals, achievements were, what was happening in my life at the time that I was gravitating towards, right? So yeah, I feel like personally, I fell into maybe a very old school traditional cog, so to speak, within the public university system down in Florida, where if I didn't seek advisement, it was just assumed that I had everything that I needed and I was on the track I was supposed to be on, right? So yeah, I think that's a pretty good call out in that, the more that we can have, again, going back to those touch points, individual points of connection, right, that you can have that speak to career objectives and trajectory and goals, personal strengths and desires, right, with that academic journey, just increases learners' potential for success. And I guess I'm a good lab rat, so to speak, or case study, right, on the fact that I went in two completely different directions.
Right.
So yeah,
And
if
yet,
my
I was gonna
sorry.
say, no, I was gonna say, and yeah, and if your institution at the time had been where you are discussing things now and had identified your academic program, what are the skills you're learning? If in your, the rest of your journey or co-curricular student affairs experience, they had helped identify those skills, maybe that would have been kind of an easier move into different directions. And we know that, students change careers a lot now. So I think that's why, as you mentioned, we're seeing such a shift to skill-based rather than degree-based discussions amongst our employers. All right. Well, thank you very much. As we conclude today, I want to give a wonderful shout out to Tony. For those of you who are also grappling with these questions of how do we communicate this, one way that you can absolutely communicate this to your institutions is by sharing the recording once it goes out. Also, Tony, I know you said that you would be happy to interface with any of the individuals on this call. So if you want to drop any of your contact information into the chat while we're wrapping up. I also do want to thank our SAL Professional Learning and Development Committee for their help in bringing this conversation to you today. You will all be receiving a recording of the structured conversation along with any associated materials, and there will be a link to provide feedback because, of course, we're always assessing. You'll be getting that via email, and it'll also be available on SAL's website. The SAL PLDC will be celebrating the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday with some unstructured conversations around our dinner tables, but you can join us in early December for our next structured conversation. It is with Sarah Wu and Vince Nix on MOOC data analysis. That will be on December 7th at the same time as this one is, and you can look for more information from that also on our SAL page. So we hope you are willing to maybe be like Tony. And although he said the bar was not going to be as high as last time, I think he set a really high bar. And so if you want to submit your own proposal or talk to somebody about doing a proposal for a structured conversation, you can go to our website and access that information as well. I know that I will be sharing this talk widely because I think one of the best ways to get us in conversation at our institutions around the need for this information is to look at evidence-based documentation from employers and things that people like Tony and others are sharing. So I hope you all have gotten a lot out of today's conversation and are willing to take these conversations back to your own institutions and further that experience and see where we can grow and where we can help students achieve the career goals that they want to achieve and that we want them to achieve. And on that note, thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next time in December, and have a wonderful rest of your month.